I believe with everything that I have that anyone watching this video can become a millionaire, regardless of where you were born, what training you've had up to this point, how rich your parents are, or any other excuse that you can think of. The fact of the matter is that most people who become millionaires think and do things differently than the average member of society. And those differences compound over time, and that's what turns regular, normal, everyday people today into millionaires tomorrow. I'm speaking figuratively, of course. Please refrain from attacking me in the comments for promising that you will be a millionaire tomorrow. But without further ado, let's talk about those things, the things that millionaires are doing that the average Joe is not doing. Now, before we start, there's 2 points that I want to cover, and the first one is what millionaires do not do, and then the second thing is how millionaires think differently, and then we'll dive into the things that millionaires do. I think that the reason that millionaires are doing a lot of things that they're doing is because of a mindset. It's a way that they think. And until we can get ourselves into that mindset and think similarly, we're not going to be able to consistently do the things that millionaires are doing to become millionaires. The first thing millionaires don't do, at least on their journey to becoming a millionaire, is they don't Netflix and chill. Sure, they might watch one episode or one video on Netflix every once in a while, but you will not see people that are becoming millionaires spend hours and hours binge watching TV shows every weekend before they've ever made it. Number 2 is that millionaires spend less money than they earn. You'll find a wide discrepancy on how much millionaires spend every single year versus how much they earn. And a lot of them, as we'll talk about a little later, don't necessarily earn a crazy amount of money. They've just figured out that if they spend a lot less than they earn, a lot of good things can start to happen over time. And the third thing is they don't wait for someday. And this is probably the number one thing in my opinion. When I go look at people that have succeeded, they're not the type of person that says, someday I'm going to do this. Someday I'm going to start a business. Someday I'm going to start a side hustle. Someday I'm going to invest in this. Every someday is today for them, and they're always working towards the goals that they have. Now let's talk briefly about how millionaires think, because I don't think millionaires care what life has given them versus everyone else. They're not constantly comparing themselves to what advantages or disadvantages they've been given in life. Statistics show that 80% of millionaires are self-made, and I'll be the first one to admit that a lot of those millionaires, they had different advantages. Some of them may have had better parents, some of them may have had better education, some of them may have just straight up had a lot more money growing up, but none of them sit there and dwell on what they had versus what the other people had. Because who cares? That doesn't help you accomplish your goals. Focusing on your disadvantages has never been a strategy for getting anywhere in life. What they really have in common is progress. Wherever these people are, a vast majority of them are not content with the status quo. They're not content with their current job or their current situation. And wherever it is that they started on the spectrum of advantage or disadvantages in life, they're continually learning, growing, improving, and moving up that spectrum. All right, let's dive in and talk about the number one thing millionaires do. And by the way, guys, I typically don't. I'm not a big statistics person. You don't see me throwing out a ton of statistics, but for this movie, we actually did do a ton of research, and I spent a lot of time actually researching what habits and what things that a vast majority of millionaires do. So you can go ahead and complain in the comments, but all the things that we're going to talk about are things that a vast majority of people that became millionaires did actually do. And I'll be the first to admit that there's exceptions to these, but this is the norm. So let's talk about number 1, and that's they invest consistently. In fact, 75% of millionaires said that regular, consistent investing over a long period of time is the reason for their success. Only 31% of these people averaged $100,000 a year or more over the course of their career, and a third of these people never made 6 figures in a single working year of their career. Now, this statistic came from Dave Ramsey, who I'm not a big fan of, and definitely pushes this general idea of slow, steady investments. But it's interesting to see that a majority of people that have become millionaires have not done so with one wild moment or one crazy investment because they bought Bitcoin or Dogecoin at the right time. Sure, there's a few people that have pulled that off and become millionaires that way, but a majority and a vast majority of the people that have made it and become millionaires in life have done so through slow, steady, consistent, safe investing. Number 2 is one that people love to quote on TikTok as they do side hustles, and that's that most millionaires have multiple streams of income. So when I was diving into this, trying to figure out if this is real, because the only place I've actually ever heard that most millionaires have 5 or 6 or 7 sources of income is on TikTok, and I'm going to try not to source a TikTok video as my main source for this video, but I did find that 65% of self-made millionaires had 3 streams of income, 45% had 4 streams of income, and 29% had 5 streams of income. And the way they work it is each additional income stream that they add gives them wealth that they then leverage that wealth and they invest into other things. Now, to give you a good example of what I'm talking about, I'm invested, and I've talked quite a bit about a product called YieldNodes. It's in the crypto space. It gives me about a 5% yield every month on a bunch of money. And what I do is I take that money that's coming out of YieldNodes every month and I turn around and buy Bitcoin. Now, this is in my riskier portfolio. This isn't everything that I'm doing, right? But this gives you a good idea of how I'm using one asset to help build up another asset. And you do the same thing in real estate. I can buy a piece of real estate and then I can borrow against that equity as it starts to grow and buy another piece of real estate. And this is how millionaires do it. They tend to take wealth that they've generated and use it to generate more wealth. And then they'll leverage that wealth and use it to generate more wealth. And more often than not, you're not going to see millionaires selling off a bunch of assets. Instead, they just leverage the assets they have to produce cash flow, or they'll take out loans against the assets they have to buy more assets. Number 3 is something that this channel is all about and something that I'm a huge fan of, and that's that a majority of them own businesses versus work in businesses. So if you look at the numbers, 20% of the affluent households in America are headed by retirees, but of that remaining 80%, more than 2/3 are headed by self-employed owners of businesses. So in America, fewer than 5 households, or about 18% of these households, are headed by self-employed business owners or professionals. But these self-employed people are 4 times more likely to be millionaires than those who work for others. So hopefully that statistic made sense. Essentially, if you start your own business, you are significantly more likely to become a millionaire than somebody that works at a company for their entire life. Now, that's not to say that the second one doesn't work, but the numbers tell a story here that there's a lot more potential to achieve that milestone in life if you start your own business and run your own business. Now, the reason for this is simply trading time for money. You have a limited amount of time in your life, and if you spend your entire life trading that time for money, then that means that there's a limit on just how high up you can go. Now, if you instead start a business and you start to hire employees and you start to leverage systems and things like that, which is like a lot of what we do in my business, then we're able to start scaling and making more and more money without putting in more time, which is really the best asset in life that you can have. So I know it's a cutesy phrase. I know it appears on all kinds of quotes on Instagram and motivational little mini speeches, but moving away from the idea that you have to spend your life trading time for money will be one of the biggest changes that can bring you closer to being a millionaire I think you can make in your life. And the last one I want to talk about is that millionaires invest in real estate. In fact, the statistics show that 90% of millionaires invest in real estate. And I want to pause for a second and give you a numbers example so that you can see on the screen exactly why all these millionaires are investing in real estate and how much true potential real estate has. I think a lot of people don't actually realize just how powerful investing in real estate can be. So for this example, I want to talk about a property that I bought in 2018, and it was in Memphis. Now, I bought this property for $35,000 down. So the asking price was about $150,000. We put down 20%. We have a property manager that runs everything, which means that me and my wife do literally no work except for once a year. We'll basically submit some tax documents, and every once in a while we might get on a phone call with the property manager. Now, this property, after paying the property manager and paying the mortgage and paying repairs and everything else, typically makes about $300 to $400 a month. And in fact, in the next few months, we'll be upping the rent and it'll be making about $500 a month. So the way this is going to work is that in 5 to 6 years, we're going to completely get our initial investment back. Okay, so that $35,000, $40,000 is going to be completely paid off and back in our bank account. So now we're continuing to make $500 a month, but now it's basically for free. All of our initial investment is back and we're just making $500 a month. Now, on top of that, this property is growing in equity at about 5% a year, meaning that the value of the home is growing at about 5% a year. Now, I'll be the first to admit in the last 2 years, it's grown about 20%, but on average, I think it usually grows about 5%. So that means that we're making $7,500 a year just on equity growth as well. So now we're making $500 a month with our rent, but we're also making another $7,500 a year in growth in equity as the home continues to grow in value. And it's doing all of that while it's paying itself off. So 30 years from now, we own a home outright that's probably worth $230,000 to $300,000. We've made money the entire time, and now we're going to be making significantly more money, or we can sell the home for a significant chunk of money. And the best part about it all is through the entire process, we've had a ton of tax breaks and a ton of tax advantages that have come because we've made our money this way. There really is very little in terms of investments that come close to real estate, and that's why a vast majority of millionaires do that. Now, we've talked about this multiple times in the channel. I use a company called DFY Real Estate typically for most of my real estate investing. They do a lot of the groundwork for me. me. And because I'm not a real estate expert, they're able to make sure that I get good deals and that I don't get screwed getting into some poorly put together deals. Now, these are 4 numbers-backed things that millionaires are doing, but I would love to know what you think millionaires are doing differently. And I would love to hear when you hope to or plan to become a millionaire. And if being a millionaire is on your bucket list, I want to make a recommendation because we talked about how millionaires think differently. I'm going to leave a link to a book below that's called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It's just going to be on Amazon and it's by Robert Kiyosaki. The biggest key to becoming a millionaire is changing the way you think, because when you change the way you think, that will change what you do automatically. And once you read this book, it will change the way you view the world, or at least it did for me. And it will do the same for you, and it doesn't cost very much money. We'll also leave, there's this button right down here somewhere. It starts with an S and it ends with an subscribe. So you could probably click that, and I would imagine that will help you on your journey to becoming a millionaire as well. That was dumb, but thanks for watching, guys.